My name is Nichole, and today we have Katherine Pam, who is a seasoned business consultant and social entrepreneur. She also works with Stalwart Group. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you, Nichole. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good morning to you too. Okay, so we'll just dive straight into the questions. The first question, of course, is who is Kate? Can you introduce yourself? Tell us about yourself.
Okay. Well, my name is Kate Pam. I'm the CEO of the Stalwart Group. The Stalwart Group is comprises 3 subsidiaries. One Stalwart Consult International, which is a training and consulting firm. So we offer corporate training services to companies and individuals. We have open courses as well. And then we do consulting in the area of business development. And then there's Stalwart Communities Africa, which is a social enterprise. And it was set up mainly with a focus on education, leadership, and empowerment. Education, because we identified a huge gap between urban and rural education, public and private education. As you know, in developed countries, when you go, no matter what village you go to, the standard of education is the same. That's not the same in our country, and there are myriad issues within the education sector. So we have capacity development programs for teachers, programs for the people themselves, and we're looking at education models that will work for Nigeria and indeed Africa. And then we also do leadership, because when you have laid a good foundation for the children, as they grow older, it's important to begin to develop their leadership capacity so that they're thinking more about the collective, more about the cause and effect, the consequences of their actions and all that, just to prepare them generally for life. So for the secondary school children, aged children, and young adults, we have a number of leadership programs that we run from the John Maxwell curriculum. I'm a John Maxwell certified trainer, speaker, and coach. So we run some of those programs, leadership programs for children and young persons. And then we also are focused on women economic empowerment. Reason being that women constitute 50% of the population. They are the primary caregivers in the family. They play an important role within the family, and there are so many families today that you have women as the breadwinners. So they're in business, they're in leadership, they're in politics, and they're still within the home. So it's important to empower the woman because she is the aggregator of all the stakeholders within the family. So those are the 3 areas that we focus on. And so what we try to do, because we're trying to bridge the gap between rural and public education or urban education, we focus more on those rural women or women from rural areas, and we try to empower them so that they're able to give their children or the people within their households better care, better education, and better prepare them for the future. So there's also Aberfeldia Energy. It's an oil and gas company. Our corporate trainings for Stalwart Consult mainly revolve around the oil and gas sector. And so because of that, the energy company is just set up to be able to execute some projects in the oil and gas sector. But the main thing that we do, and the heart of what we do, is around people, and it's mainly Stalwart Communities and Stalwart Consults.
Great. Okay, so let's talk about Kate's background. Can we talk about what you do, where you're from? Tell me more about that.
Okay, as I'm not used to talking about myself, I talk about the business most of the time. Well, I am from Jos, Plateau State. My ethnic group is the largest minority ethnic group in Plateau State. I'm Birom. Not many people would know about it, but geography has it historically that we're one of the our people are one of the earliest settlers in West Africa. And we have names that are very similar to Chinese names like Kim, Chung, Chuang, Chungdung, and so people think that we probably must have migrated from China. I don't know. I grew up in Jos, went to primary school at University Staff School Jos, and then went on to secondary school, Federal Government Girls College in Tang, and then university, my first degree at ATB Bauchi. Then I went to serve in Port Harcourt, and I worked there for a few years, about 3 years. Came back to Abuja. I worked in investment banking, started my career in investment banking with BGL, and then came back to Abuja and worked with Northbridge for a while, and then went on to the UK to do an MBA. First one, I specialized in marketing from the Grenoble Graduate School of Business and Finance in the south of France. And then I went to, I did a second MBA, and it's a global MBA. So I specialized in project management, performance measurement, and control from the London Metropolitan University. And then after my MBA, I decided, during my MBA, I made the decision not to go back into investment banking. I wanted to go into consulting. And there were things that I was passionate about. Everything that Stalwart Communities does, those were the things that I was passionate about. I wanted to set up something. So I came back, and I've been doing that since I got back in 2005. The leadership program, I currently sit on the governing board for the Students Mentorship Board of University of Abuja. Among other things, among being the CEO of this company. Nichole.
So let's talk a little bit about social enterprises. Considering that your company is a social enterprise, how do you identify opportunities to create social enterprises? Or what is your opinion about that? How does anyone?
I think the first thing about creating social enterprises, it's for you to be able to identify an opportunity, you have to be looking for it, isn't it?
Right.
You have to have some kind of interest at some point. When you're looking at social enterprises, are mainly defined as the application of entrepreneurial skills for social impact, right? So first of all, your passion, a person's passion must be aligned with the collective good. You must be thinking about entrepreneurship. Basically, is problem solving. Every entrepreneur begins by identifying a problem and trying to solve and seeking to solve it. Now, the difference between social enterprises and a for-profit business is mainly the intent behind it. Some people do it to exploit, the opportunity for maximum profit. But the social entrepreneur thinks about the impact on the collective, on the community, on the society. What are the and most of these impacts, if you look at the SDGs, they're mainly long-term, and some of them, and not all of them, are monetary. So as a social entrepreneur, you look at it and you say, okay, I realize that I need money to make an impact, but the money that I make is for impact. So it's not because I want to buy a yacht and a private island and I want to live in a $300 million home and stuff like that you see with a lot of the for-profit business people. But a typically a social entrepreneur would reinvest their income within the community.
Right. And
so first of all, that's the first point. You must have an interest in the community, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it comes from a place of empathy. It comes from a place of the need for change or the desire for change. And it should come from a place of desire to empower people within the community. So you're not one standing tall, rich person among poor people, but you're lifting people along. You know, there's a proverb that says, if you want to go fast, you go alone, but if you want to go far, you go with people. So first of all, that perspective, it starts from there. And then obviously from the interest, you must be able to observe trends, look at where there are gaps. Okay. Where are the gaps? Like in our case, we looked at the education sector. So being passionate about education, passionate about women and families and all that, we looked at the trends, research. We saw that in Nigeria we have the lowest, or not the lowest, the highest teacher-pupil ratio in Africa. So that means if you're a teacher should have maybe one teacher to 20-30 pupils, but that's not really the case here. So there's insufficient number of teachers. Even the teachers, you look at the trends, how many of them are really qualified to do what they do? So by the time you observe the trends, you look at what is going on, you do your research, you'll be able to identify gaps. Now the entrepreneurship begins to set in. You having developed yourself as an entrepreneur, and if there's time I'm going to speak a little more about developing oneself as an entrepreneur. Then the steps that you take in solving the problem would define in themselves, come together in themselves to define social entrepreneurship. So basically, that is what I would say. Just tidbits on how to identify opportunities for social entrepreneurs or enterprises.
And what role or how relevant do you think social enterprises are to Africa's development?
I think social enterprises are the key to Africa's development, because much as our culture is very collectivist, we are all about our definition of families extended. It's not nuclear, and we're very communal in the way we do things. When it comes to national development or when it comes to economic growth, we're super individualistic. In Nigeria, where I come from, you would find that people would do things not for the collective good, but would put personal interest, ethnic interest, religious interest above national interest. So when you look at the principles of social entrepreneurship and the impact desire, you see that it's not making billionaires out of Africans, making Africa a wealthy continent that it really is, but we haven't been able to harness it, because when the billionaires come out, they are billionaires for themselves, not for Africa. So with social entrepreneurship, the more social entrepreneurs we have, the more the social impact we can have, and the more the social impact, the higher the economic level of the common Africa. So basically, development is increasing or expanding the middle class, making the middle class more accessible to the average African. Now there's so many at the bottom of the pyramid, but if we can close that gap and expand the middle class, Africa will truly be developed. And so with social enterprises, that informs your employment, the kinds of projects that you go into, and so many other things. So I think that is the heartbeat for Africa.
Right. Okay. Let's go to the investment side of social entrepreneurship. What do you think social entrepreneurs in Africa need to attract investment?
I think it's pretty much what every business needs to attract investment. The only slight difference with social enterprises is that you're positioned to get some kinds of grants and funding, right? But in recent times, there's been an agitation moving from aid to trade. Okay, can we, instead of giving us grants, can you just aid trade so that we can develop our industries and other things, right? So, regardless of what the business model is, whether it's a social enterprise or a for-profit business, even if it's a charity, first things first is accountability. Okay, corporate governance structures have to be put in place. There has to be adequate planning, financially, strategically, operationally, and it's always good to have an operational structure. Oftentimes we don't, when you begin to peel off you unveil the companies, you see that there's no structure, and no funder would put money in something that has no structure, because it's the structure that sets up accountability systems. So even if it's a grant that you're not expecting anything back, the evaluation or the success criteria for a grant is the impact that, they look at what the outcomes should be, whether short term, medium term, or long term. So if a social entrepreneur can show that I am accountable, and this project that I'm going into is not only viable, but it has significant social impact, I think funders would definitely go into it, because at the end of the day, whether social or economic, it's still an investment.
And what problems do you see that people face when they are looking for funding as a social entrepreneur? And how do they overcome those problems?
The major thing is, first of all, the lack of awareness. Oftentimes, people are not aware of the funding opportunities that are available. That's something that came across very strongly with this pandemic. And then, secondly, some of the funds that are available are earmarked for specific things. So if the project that interests me has no funding, then it's already a barrier to me, isn't it? So, like I said at the beginning, it's a function of interest. A business person will go for a project because for profit, it's a profit. But you see, a social entrepreneur will go for a project out of passion. And so sometimes passion is not profitable. So finding that balance, making passion profitable and impactful is what will attract funding. And so when it's not there, and when the funding analysts, when they look at the business plan, or they look at the project document, and it doesn't look like it will not be profitable or as impactful as they visualize, that would be a barrier to getting funding. And of course, statutory compliance, corporate governance issues as well. The accountability systems in place. Usually they would also want to see that financial records are being properly managed, they're being properly accounted for. So when it comes to financial literacy, the lack thereof has proven to be a significant barrier, particularly among women-owned businesses, like the women that we work with. One of the things that we try to teach them is financial literacy, because oftentimes people start something small, and then when they're raising funds for something, you see personal bank accounts. That immediately is a red flag, because if you are representing an organization and the organization does not have as something as basic as a bank account, it poses a red flag. So little things like that, but it starts first with the entrepreneur themselves, and then the entrepreneur putting their house in order. If the house is in order and you're looking for funding, then it's probably, then the next step would be to scan for the funding opportunities that are available. But that's a topic for another day.
Okay, let's go to STEM. So why do you think STEM is the key to unlocking talent and output in Africa? Or do you think that it is an actual key for Africa to expand and unlock talent?
Okay, so by STEM, we're talking about science, technology, engineering, arts now has been included, and mathematics.
That's right.
Of course, STEM is it's the future. It's today, tomorrow, and the future. Why? Because let's take the pandemic for example. Everywhere that people have successfully, kept the death rates low and the rate of infection low, you would see that there was a scientific approach, isn't it? And so, because science has been evolving over time, science is evolutionary. It's important that it's incorporated early on in life, from the basic level of education, from kindergarten, that must be incorporated, because science is a way of thinking. What's the basis of science? It's questioning. You ask questions. Why is this like this? Why is white called white? And what makes white white? What's the difference between why is white positive and black negative? Why is this? Must it be like that? Oh no, but who says that should be the case? And so as people learn, it fosters critical reasoning and it develops problem-solving capacity. And so that is the future, because today we have a lot of graduates who do not have that capacity. And for an entrepreneur to succeed, you must be able to reason in that direction. And even entrepreneurs, as an employer of labor, it's a quality that I look out for, and a lot of entrepreneurs business people would look out for in potential employees. Can they help solve problems? And it takes a scientific approach to be able to do that. And of course, with engineering, that's engineering it's a resource for innovation. So art, incorporating the art aspect of it is very critical, because without creativity, you know the methodology, you know the process, but creativity is the icing on the cake. And creativity and scientific approach is what gives rise to innovation. In Apple is one of the, I think it's the top one. I don't know if it's number 1 or number 2 now between Apple and Amazon. But you see a lot of creativity. They put in a lot of creativity in the things that they do. And arts, learning, incorporating arts definitely develops that creative element, in us. When we do in our training programs, I just finished a training program yesterday, and it was a training for the military on simulation. And basically, simulation is there are different scenarios, but from gaming to other things, and you could see how technology can go a long way in solving a lot of problems, because you learn to fly an aircraft using a drone, or in a simulation environment where you're in a simulator and it gives you the same feeling, the same, you could crash, all the things that you need to do. Imagine if you're learning to fly and an aircraft, and you begin by flying an actual aircraft. How much does an aircraft cost? How much does a round cost if you're learning to shoot? And so for security, for so many things, even in there are simulations in the healthcare sector to prevent pandemics and all that. That was one of the things that Donald Trump was getting grief for, he was being accused for, because he closed down the department that ran some of all these simulations to say, if this happens, what can we do? Because you're doing it within an environment where it's safe to fail. It reduces costs, it saves lives, and it builds confidence for the people that are learning. So, and all these things would not happen without STEM.
Mm-hmm. And what is your message to African leaders? How would you emphasize how vigilant Africa should be in terms of grasping STEM and trying to teach Africans about them?
I didn't have time. I was going to bring out statistics on budget allocation to education. I know that in my country, not enough is budgeted for education. Now, oftentimes, that is born out of the short-term orientation of our leaders. You look at China, where China is today was the 50-year plan. China, at any given point in time, has a 50-year plan. Think about Dubai 30 years ago. I mean, Dubai is where it is today. It took them less than 50 years to get to where they are. Singapore, the same thing. And one of the things that helped Singapore was that they looked at the education system and they set out a criteria. A simple thing that they set out, I think they said by year 7 or by an average Singaporean child must love Singapore. That was a performance indicator for them. Now, talk about strategic planning and policy formulation, right? So our leaders my advice to the leaders is to be able to set their sights beyond their tenures. Because to the average African leader, I have to be on that seat of power for 30 years for it to work. There's no succession planning. We don't build institutions, we build people who become demigods. But when we strengthen our institutional capacity, be able to use technology to retain knowledge within the institution, and there's a repository of knowledge in the institution, learning becomes continuous. Okay, and for the leadership, investment in STEM is what we need, because see, as Africans, we have to develop our own solutions that work for us. India has been able to do that. They said, okay, we're not going to focus on everything. They picked IT. And India became the IT hub of the world. China said, oh, okay, so we're not going to compete with the West because we can't compete with US, Japan, Germany, and all that. But we're not going to compete with them to be best in class. But can we be the best alternative to the best in class? And so they drove price down. And today, does anybody, Chinese phones, Chinese products, Chinese everything, competing with the best in class? But that's not where they started from. So I think our leaders need to be able to come together. I'm really keen to see where the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement goes, because hopefully we learn to trade together. We can begin to look at solutions that are adaptable to our diversity, our cultural diversity, the language, to be able to rise above the language barriers that we have. Because I think Africa, I stand to be corrected, but I think Africa is the most diverse continent when it comes to languages and ethnic groups and all that. Nigeria alone has over 350. That plateau state that I come from, there are 3.5 million people, and there are 51 distinct ethnic groups. You literally cannot understand that. They don't understand their languages. So those are some opportunities for social entrepreneurs, and so our government must be able to encourage innovations that will bring us together and will bring solutions that would help Africa as a continent live up to its potential.
Let's get to the role of CSR and advocacy. In your opinion, how does that play in Africa's business space at the moment?
Can you please take that question again?
Okay, so what is your view on the role of CSR and advocacy in the African business space at the moment?
Wow, CSR is something that is extremely important, but I dare say that, beyond CSR is CSI, which is corporate social investment. Because oftentimes when we deal with companies, CSR is just an add-on. It's not the main focus of the business. So as social entrepreneurs, it's not CSR. The entire investment is for social impact. So it's part of the main strategy. Okay, but when you look at a lot of businesses and companies, you see that CSR is just a small add-on department, and it's just, let's just set aside a certain part of the budget, let's just give back, So there's no long-term strategy, there's no metrics for measurement, and how do you evaluate the social impact? Okay. People just do it and set aside a budget. So if somebody comes and says we're raising money for this, they just say, we've sponsored this, that. Okay. So I think CSR plays a significant role, and it's more importantly, companies in the African space need to see it as an investment. Because when you see it as an investment, you say, okay, if I invest in security is a big issue in Nigeria now. It's a critical issue that is being looked at. So if private companies would say, okay, let's invest insecurity in some of these places, right? That problem of security is solved. More businesses can go in. Okay, you employ more people. You have more qualified people from that environment who can then work for you, and then people can take ownership as well. Okay, so it becomes a collective thing, as opposed to in businesses. Businesses are no longer seen as exploitative, but they're seen as collaborators in development.
Okay, let's go on to your company, Stalwart. Can you highlight how Stalwart can deliver social impact strategy and planning for corporate?
Well, one of the things that we look at is to look at the design thinking approach. I'm doing that now. By design thinking begins from a place of empathy. Okay. Now, our Stalwart communities, for what we do, a lot of businesses tailor their strategies according to the bottom line. What is the direct impact on profit, right? But what we try to do is to try to move that thinking, to first of all identify benefits, direct benefits of social impact within the space of the company, okay? And to be able to create those linkages at local, regional, national, and even global level, okay? And we also look at the goodwill potential, okay? Because goodwill is an intangible asset. And oftentimes, when you're focused just or primarily on profit, people don't pay as much attention to some of those intangible resources that you have. So in a social impact strategy, like I said, is that shift in the mindset and in the thought process of businesses to begin to see it as an investment. And then back to the first question that you asked, they begin to see those investment opportunities, and then they begin to see how they can leverage on those opportunities, not just for the good of the company, but for the collective good.
Let's go on to your insights of Chess Queen and Rainbow Philosophy. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that's about?
Okay, so for the Chess Queen, why we chose the Chess Queen? First of all, the name Stalwart is synonymous with an armor tank, because in warfare, an armor tank is a dependable weapon. They navigate rough terrain and protect the soldiers. That's why you see they're shooting from armor tanks, if you visualize it. And on the chessboard, chess is a military game, it's warfare. And on the chessboard, the chess queen is the most valuable piece on the board. There are games where, the chess queen is usually the last line of defense. And there are games where the chess queen is sacrificed just to protect the king. So, and when you relate that to the smallest piece on the board, which is the pawn, whereas the queen is all powerful, can move in all directions, the pawn is very limited. The pawn is like the micro and small enterprises. They're very limited in their movement, in their capacity, and so many other things. But with resilience, with strategy and planning, you know that a pawn becomes the most powerful piece on the board when they can cross the middle and get to the other side, because the pawn then becomes a queen. It's called a promotion. And so that is our philosophy. It's not, though we serve big companies and all that, but we work with a lot of SMEs, and we work with ideas that are not yet big businesses or big enterprises yet. We work with people who have a vision, who are going somewhere, and so our goal is to be able to be that dependable partner to help them achieve that excellence that they're looking for in providing, sustainable solutions where their solutions do not impact future generations negatively. And we do that through pragmatism and integrity. And we also see ourselves as agents of transformation. So in everything that we do, there's always a social impact aspect to it. And one of the things that we do is the Spotlight series, where we were doing it during the pandemic, we were doing it every Tuesday, but now not so much. We do it at least once or twice a month now. And we look at different sectors and we help businesses see opportunities, because obviously the pandemic affected a lot of people, ourselves inclusive. And so we were thinking, how can businesses survive? And so we've looked at strategies for survival, we've looked at financial management, we've looked at operational management, we've looked at the oil and gas industry, we've looked at opportunities in healthcare. And the last one that we had last week, we were looking at education, and we had the Minister of State for Education and quite a robust panel group. And the feedback that we got from there, a lot of people are seeing opportunities in applying digital technology to education. So that for us is, because it's a free program, it's a social impact, it's one of our social impact strategies. And that speaks to our rainbow philosophy. We are an agent of change. So whatever we do, change is at the heart of what we do. People are at the heart of what we do.
Mm-hmm. Can we talk a little bit about what Kate is working on? What are you working on? What is your big project? What is the next big thing for you?
Wow, what is the big project? The big project is twofold for us, okay? Stalwart Consults is to be able to set up, is to be able to make learning as easy as possible, to develop our human capital, because that's the biggest asset that we have. It's not the oil,
right?
And more recently, not the gold that is in Zamfara. No, it's people. All 200 million of us. It's the people. So how do we build capacity to make our working population more productive, okay, to increase productivity? So we're setting up our training programs around that, so that whatever we teach, that is at the heart of what we do. So the next big project is to set up a learning center, learning resources that will be able to reach out to those people who are done with school, who are working to increase productivity, because that has a direct correlation, direct impact on the rural communities, on what we want to do in Stalwart communities, okay? Because when people are more productive, when people earn more, are doing more and can earn more, businesses make more money, they can pay more, people earn more, people can support their own more. And we're currently, from the last webinar that we have, we're currently looking at different models. So we're working on a report, we're looking at different educational models that will work, particularly for northern Nigeria, because there we have literacy levels as low as 5-7%. So there's a huge gap there. Something really needs to be done. And so in terms of education, that's what we're working on, and that basically is the core of what we do, because everything else, sits on that education model. As we're developing the education model, teachers need to be trained, leaders need to be trained, women need to be trained, and they need to be empowered both economically and intellectually and otherwise. So that is basically the vision and what we are looking at, what we're working on at the moment.
And lastly, what is your advice to Get Funded Africa? As you know, we also try to uplift people and economies in Africa through entrepreneurship and helping companies raise funds and to grow and create jobs. What is your advice to us?
Okay, I was going to ask a question first to say, okay, now that I'm speaking with Get Funded Africa, and as the name implies, how can you keep doing what you're doing? At the end of the day, we're only as strong as our weakest link. So if we can help to strengthen one another, our strapline is sharing strength, fashioning futures. The future can always be only be best fashioned when we share our strengths. So we look forward to partnering with you in some way or working together, to leverage on our collective strengths and see how we can fashion a future for Africa and Africans that will set us apart.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Kate, for joining us on the segment of Get Funded Africa, the Attract segment. And yes, thank you everyone for watching. Goodbye and see you next week.
Thank you for having me, Nichole. Bye-bye.
Okay, great. Are you sure? Yes.